All right. I believe this means we are mostly live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions, welcome to another Monday morning tech chat show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I got to get this right out of the way at the top of the podcast. I use a service called Restream to send out the podcast to multiple platforms all at the same time. I obviously can't get the bandwidth to manually upload every video feed in real time to every service that it goes to. So Periscope and Mixer and Twitch. I think I'm still streaming to Facebook. I really have no idea. So unfortunately, it seems Restream is fighting a massive denial of service attack. And I think the stream is gonna work. Like the actual video streaming is gonna work, but none of the side features of Restream are currently working. So my chat on Mixer, on Periscope, how I normally see comments coming in from every platform that I stream on, it doesn't seem like that's gonna work. So if you're watching this, if you're following this, the only chat that seems to be functional is Facebook. I mean, not Facebook, is Twitch. Not Facebook. So if you want to join the live chat, you want to join the discussion, normally where I'd be pulling comments from Mixer, I'd be able to see what you type on Periscope. Right now, the internet is, Restream is under attack. The only thing I can see is Twitch. Apologize. I have no control over what Restream is able to coordinate right now, and I can't keep every single service up in separate windows, even on my dual displays. I won't be able to track all of that. I know that's a bummer, but if you're watching this right now on another platform and you want to join the discussion, twitch.tv/SomeGadgetGuy is where we're streaming live. Matt Tyler, the internet in general is just under a really heavy load. Andy from Andy, main takeaway from this stream already, not Facebook. We've got some Facebook news to cover. Should be an interesting conversation. Always an interesting conversation. I'm seeing some great folks already in the Twitch stream. Aditya Anil, Q3 Becker, Gary the Fireman, Blue Malicious, Matt Tyler, Tech Lovin' Mama, Heiki. All right, we're going to have JMX Warrior. Excellent. JMX Warrior casting the stream over to the big TV, one on the big screen. All right, I'm stoked to hear that. Matt Tyler, Facebook has all your info there. People probably watching us right now anyway. And Q3 Becker, we them great folks. Yeah, you are. You are those great folks, because again, this community always rises to the occasion, and we've got a lot of news to talk about. We're gonna try and keep things moving, keep things a little bit more fun. Always concerns with what's going on in the world around us today. We're gonna call this week 3 of babysitting YouTube. So for those of you out there keeping track, the first time we started talking about what was going on in the world, my podcast and a few of my videos got demonetized on YouTube. So now we are childishly referring to it as the situation. And for those of you, anyone in the live chat here, especially because the live chat's on Twitch, if you want to fill in, folks, when we're doing why I'm being so cagey about the situation, is because I'd like to not have this content demonetized. It hurts my YouTube channel. It starts to become like this punitive strike against other videos that I'm putting out there. So we'll continue to act like little kids and wink, wink, nudge, nudge while we talk about global events that everyone is talking about right now. Aditya Anil and Matt Tyler, thank you very much. This has been great. So Hashtag won the situation sounds like a wrestling name. I mean, like, I need like a really hokey catchphrase. I have not kept up with professional wrestling, but I'd need like a really silly, I'm sending you to the office. You're getting detention or something like that. I don't know. And what should my wrestler voice be? Because I don't think I can keep up with like, you ain't going nowhere. Like, I think I can get about 4 or 5 really good growls out like that, and then my voice would be shot. All right. Like I said, we've got a lot to cover. Why don't we jump right into some housekeeping? I don't know. Do we have an over/under on housekeeping? A DT? No, you're fired. The Ric Flair, woo! Blue Malicious. We need these wand clips out of context. Ooh, Mimranglat's got the right one. Okay. All right. Mimranglat has my catchphrase, my wrestling catchphrase in a deep growl, but I digress. But I digress. Okay, what do we got here? We've got Gary the Fireman saying plus or minus 12 minutes. Plus or minus 12 minutes? Like, my housekeeping could be 24 minutes long. We've got Blue Malicious at 9 minutes and Aditya and Nil at 8 minutes. Okay. And JMX Warrior at 9. So we're saying around 9 minutes. Okay. Root Knight, I digress, proceeds to powerbomb opponent. I love it. All right, let's jump into some housekeeping. I'm just getting the SomeGadgetGuy.com website up to the right place. All of the news stories that we're going to be talking about this week, including the content I've produced, things that other folks have produced, you'll be able to find everything on SomeGadgetGuy.com, and specifically in the show notes for this week's podcast. When the audio version goes live, all of the links will be there. Where I'm also trying to share live links better. I'm trying to share links better in the live chat. Talking is hard. Okay, so last week was actually a pretty solid week for Some Gadget Guy. We're digging into LG V60 coverage, and I am not a week 1 review kind of guy. That is not my gig. That is not my game. I do not believe that anything should be called a review when you've had it for, like the 3 days leading up to when the phone is actually available to be purchased by everyone else out there. So just going into a little screen share here. Number 1 with the bullet, I really like looking at improvements over time. I think every manufacturer should be graded on how a phone evolves. And so this year for LG is a particularly nuanced conversation. LG V60 versus V50, is it worth a 1-year upgrade? This has become one of my favorite benchmarks. Manufacturers are going through this like crazy update cycle. And I think many of us would agree, year to year is a pretty tough call. That has now become one of my highest recommendations. If you own a phone from last year, is the phone this year improved enough to recommend a 1-year upgrade for what the manufacturer is claiming? And very, very few phones, I feel, really earn that that recommendation. There's a lot where you've got like phone leasing programs and phone flip programs and like, oh, I'm gonna go from $45 a month to $48 a month. Might as well get this year's new phone. But we're saying, like, if you were to own these outright, if you were to buy these phones, could you make that play? So this V60 versus V50 video, this is something that I just like to do with new phones, and then to see how many of these phones might get my recommendation. Like, hey, if you own this OnePlus, flip into this year's model might bring enough improvements that you would enjoy this experience enough to try and sell off your old phone and buy the new phone. Now, the V60 to V50 video also includes a zoom camera comparison. Now, when folks do these camera comparisons online, I find often, not always, but often, that the phone which has the larger fan base, or the phone that's automatically going to be more popular, seems to win the comparison more often than not, right? Now, I'm talking about two LGs, so neither phone is super popular. But what I wanted to do, I labeled phone A versus phone B. There has been much gnashing of teeth over the fact that the V60 does not have a dedicated telephoto zoom sensor. The zoom is accomplished by doing a pixel crop. So you crop down that massive image sensor, and that's how you do your zoom. It's very much like the Lumia 1020 back in the day. So I did an unlabeled comparison. There's phone A and phone B, and I did just an indoor shot and an outdoor shot side by side, and I got a ton of comments and a ton of people guessing, well, this photo was blurrier, so I think it was this phone. This photo was sharper, so I think it was that phone. This phone doesn't have the telephoto, so I think it's the better phone, blah, 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 blah. Later in the podcast, in the second half, I'm going to tell you which phone was which. V60 versus V50, telephoto versus pixel crop. Stay tuned. Moving right along, another just little feature video that I did for the V60. Apparently, the LG V60 has real stylus support. So using the styli, the active pens, the Wacom AES technology pens, that you have proper stylus support. Now, I've already gotten some really like cranky comments on this video. I've basically just been muting anyone who's talking trash on YouTube these days. I'm like, I really don't have a lot of patience for people who think they know a lot about tech but don't. But I got like this one guy who just started bombing this video. I mean, like, it was like, well, LGs are terrible. You should only get a Note, and it doesn't have this feature. You can't do magnifier, and it doesn't have palm rejection, and like none of this stuff. I mean, with the exception of like he was right, it didn't have the pen magnifier tool. It's a very unique feature for a Note. But like each one of those was a separate comment. He left like 10 comments on a feature video talking about stylus support for the V60. He was so angry. I mean, like, I guess at some point in time, LG as a corporation must have kicked his puppy or something. It was astounding how mad he was that I was, and I'm assuming it was a he. I don't know of too many gadget gals out there who would have gotten this viscerally upset that I was talking about an LG feature. But I guess, maybe it was a Note owner who was very, very sensitive about stylus support. But yeah, so not a lot of chatter from LG about features that are on their phones. I feel like TK and I got the heads up. Someone in this live chat, I think, I can't remember now, when we did our live stream on YouTube, it was someone in our live chat that just clued us in that there was a bullet point on LG's marketing specs page that it should support this, and it does, and it works really well. So you can get a good close-up look at the V60 with stylus support, proper competitor to the Note now, in a really interesting way. And now I think we're gonna end up with a trio of really exciting productivity phones when we get this year's Note. When the Surface Duo comes out, I think, having a Surface branded device with an active pen, and already the beginning of the year, if you want stylus support on a monster powerful phone, the V60 is ready to go. And stylus support that works across both screens. So you've got stylus support on one screen with a Note. Folding phones are way too fragile for pen touch computing. And the only other competitor there is going to be the Surface. So the main fight for multitasking productivity is going to be LG versus Microsoft in the Android arena. And Sam 34 kilometers. Sam and Matt Tyler have been running a Sunday pandemonium stream on Twitch, and I would highly recommend checking it out. Sam's crazy, Matt's chill, really fun commentary. They're good people. They're my bros, and if you want some kind of manic chill gadget conversation. Their Sunday streams have been a lot of fun to participate with. Sam says, I'm super excited about this feature, and I think Sam's still rocking the SIM card in his G8X. So he's been doing LG dual screen for a while. From Mim Ranglat, I treat fans from all camps as angry puppies anyway. Gary the Fireman, the Droid Life podcast was super negative. It seems to be the right time of year for it. We're going to be talking about the Huawei announcement, and I don't have hands-on with the Huawei, and I've got some concerns, but I feel like the P40 just got trashed based on its spec sheet, and that stuff is driving me crazy. From Heiki, people can become hurt over nearly anything. I'm getting rated. I'm getting rated on Twitch from Air Guys TV. Party of 10 coming to check this out. You rock. Stay tuned. We're going to have some fun stuff to talk about. Love it. Thank you so much. I don't know. I don't think I've been rated before. I'm getting all Twitter-pated here. Blue Malicious, I can't remember which podcast where they just said, is anyone excited by the LG V60? And they were all just like, nah. Really struggled to even talk about the specs of the V60, and they'd already decided it wasn't worth their time. And I feel like this is a growing problem. From a production standpoint, they're not wrong. They will not make as much money, as much ad revenue, as much traffic if they spend the same amount of time covering LG, Sony, HTC, or Motorola, some of these other brands, as if they just dedicated most of their production time to OnePlus, Samsung, Apple, maybe sprinkle in a little Pixel hate, and then also, and we can mention that Sony still exists. That seems to be the way of it. People have gotten really frustrated with the tone of my videos when I'm calling out some of these inconsistencies in the approaches to reviews, but I feel we should be angry about that. At the very least, I feel we should all be very disappointed that kind of analytics, ad metrics, and SEO popularity is heavily influencing the tone of the gadget discussion out there. It's not a fair fight. It's rigged based on popularity right from the get-go, and I feel we could be doing better. I feel we should be doing better, and I feel the market deserves, especially right now, with the situation that we find ourselves in, more than ever, consumers need to have an accurate representation of what the different solutions and options are out there. And someone out there might be missing the perfect device for them, or what's going to be the absolute perfect gadget for their needs, because reviewers are so hung up and so concerned about their popularity metrics. And it blows. And I think we should try to fix that. I think we should be the community to try and address that. From Mim Ranglat, the only reason the P40 was trashed is because of the lack of GMS, Google services. Smartphone users are too tied into the Google ecosystem to open their eyes. Blue Malicious, I think a lot of people need to ask themselves, are they journalists trying to inform, or are they advertisers? And I think that's an especially fair comment. I wrestle with what I have access to and what commentary I can provide and what budget I can allocate. And there are a few times where I try to take a step back, but it's rough going out there. So again, I understand, but I still feel like we could be doing, myself included, I feel like we could all be doing better. I do try to stay at least a bit forward about what it is I'm talking about and why I'm talking about it. Let's get this out. Oh, Blue Malicious, which YouTuber referenced you this week? Pointed towards your blog post about admitting your own smartphone biases. He said he had his own biases and it was important to acknowledge. It was Brandon. You know what? Let me pull up that. Let me pull up Brandon's channel. Was it Tech Today this week? Oh, what is his? My brain is. I'm on 2 cups of coffee already, and I'm still starting this off super slow. Someone remind me, what's Brandon's YouTube channel? And I'll drop that in the live chat also. This is Tech Today. Is that it? This is Tech Today. Because he did a great, again, Brandon is the king of the gimmicky, algorithm satisfying, hokey thumbnail, but his commentary is always thoughtful and incisive. So here, this is the video that he was mentioning. Google's flagship phone must come to an end, starting with the Pixel 5 XL. And so the link, the YouTube link to that's in the live chat. I'll add that to the show notes. It's a wonderful video. I mean, not just because he gave me like a little plug for one of my editorials in there, but again, he regularly produces very thoughtful content, and I have shared a number of conversations with him about coverage on things like the Pixel, where I feel the tone of the commentary is not accurate or is not fair as compared to what the gadget actually represents. A lot of people take phones like Pixels, Sonys, and LGs, and they review what the phones aren't. They don't review what the phone is. And because the phones are not Samsungs or OnePluses, that means they're automatically losers. And we've shared a number of offline frustrations about that kind of tone in commentary. So if Google and LG start making a pivot towards the mid-range, especially with their flagship devices, I agree. I think it's the right move to make in this current situation that we find ourselves in. Oh, Jay Williams mentioned me too, saying how apart from a few people like you, people just decide LG phones aren't worth it from the get-go. Jay Williams is on the Reddit this week. I think he's got at least one of the top 5 videos on glowing rectangles. One last little bit of housekeeping, just because it was so funky, and I wanted to chat about just, you know, my first love, my first passion is audio tech. This one was just kind of weird. So let me screen share this up here. When you think premium audio, I'm sure all of you immediately jump to the company BenQ, right? The two ideas just linked in your brain. BenQ and premium audio. I am being super snarky here, but BenQ makes this funky, weird little Bluetooth hybrid speaker. And they're hinging it on these electrostatic panels, which are interesting. Electrostatic speakers in general are just interesting. But in actually using it and listening to it, they are doing some very interesting things with clarity, attack. This isn't one of those rumbly speakers. One of my problems with a lot of small home room filling Bluetooth speakers is they get muddy. You know, they're trying to pump so much bass out of these tiny little drivers, these tiny little speaker elements, that, you know, it just, you know, it's rumbly, but it's also just muddy and dull. And BenQ is doing the exact opposite. There's a distinct roll off, and it's a very clear, a very light sound. And so sometimes that can work against certain types of music, but it was a really unique listening experience. Whether or not the electrostatic elements add as much flavor to the music as their little woofers, because they've got these dual woofers. I don't need to reiterate the entire review here, but the overall tuning is super crisp, is super crystal for a Bluetooth speaker. So I had to spend a little time with that. I want to mix in some more of these types of accessories and audio tech and speaker solutions, headphones, things like that. And so I just got the one more Bluetooth speakers, and so I'm going to be playing with those next. But the BenQ review, it's fun. They make crazy great displays. I've reviewed some of their office equipment, like monitor lamps, so you can clip a lamp to your monitor and it illuminates your desk and it doesn't take up any extra space. They sent me a speaker, so I thought we should talk about it. Let me get this out of the way here. From DSO Thorn, I've always thought that Pixel phones got a lot more screen time and praise than the more under the radar brands. And I would have said that was true until the Pixel 3. With the Pixel 3 XL, it seems like the Android community turned on Google hard from the bathtub notch to some of the RAM management issues to some of the camera crashing problems. It just felt like from the Pixel 2 to the Pixel 3, Google became a non-starter in the conversation over phones to buy. And you even look at the Pixel 3a coverage where so many large YouTubers were just completely panning the 3a. Google can't do anything right. No one should buy this phone. It's underpowered. You can get a Chinese import for half the price. And then the Pixel 3a sold phenomenally well for a Pixel branded phone. And you could see people reacting to that. My favorite was like in Unbox Therapy, Lewis's podcast, where he's trying to rationalize the Pixel 3a's success, and he still can't admit that he just called it wrong. And he's like struggling to like, oh, I mean, they're doing this. I mean, Google can, well, you know, I mean, Google can spend all this money on advertising. You know, it's all they're advertising, and that's why the Pixel 3a is doing better. And you're like, that has nothing to do with the Pixel 3a being a great phone at a very good price. I mean, it's not that hard. But it was like you could see the gears locking where he'd come up with one idea, but that obviously doesn't work. It must be this. It couldn't just be that I was wrong. And getting into the Pixel 4, I mean, you can catch my Pixel 4 XL review. I don't need to repeat it here, but if you really review what that phone is, I don't see any critical deal breakers with that device. And I really feel like the problem is one of messaging. That for all of Google's resources, I think they kind of fell into the same trap as LG. Not enough media or marketing to properly educate consumers on what makes a Pixel different and what to expect from a Pixel. And unfortunately, the spec sheet leaked like 2 months before the phone came out, and then a Pixel fell off the back of a truck, and there were reviews of the phone a month before it was officially announced. So everyone made up their minds on a couple features that were missing, and that became the main conversation about the Pixel. And I don't think that's really illustrative or representative of the phone holistically. I still think it's a perfectly competitive and acceptable option in the premium smartphone space. But if they make a pivot to the mid-range, I think that's going to be really exciting for the Android smartphone market as a whole. Especially if we can get it alongside a really good Pixel 4a. What I'm hoping is they stop with this weird off-year mid-range strategy. Like, if we're going to get the Pixel 5 in 2020, just make it the Pixel 5 and the Pixel 5a. just catch up the different product lines. Have like a good upper premium mid-ranger and a good budget mid-ranger. You know, like a phone somewhere around $400 and a phone somewhere around $700, and then call it a day and call them both the Pixel 5 and 5a. It just makes more sense to me. So let me get this out of the way. From Steve Q3 Becker. The Pixel 3a doesn't matter because it's not a flagship device. Again, that brings more traffic, but we know consumers are increasingly buying in the middle and lower ends of the market. From Heiki's got a paragraph there, and I feel like a lot of us would agree with Heiki's comment. And so Standard 137, what do you think of LG canning the G series? I saw an article about it yesterday. We're going to be talking about that in the gadget block in the second half of the podcast. Let's chew through some noise because housekeeping got a little out of hand there. Huh? Yeah. What is that, 20 minutes for housekeeping? Oh, that was not my my strongest moment there. So let's jump in. We've got some news regarding the situation, how tech companies, how we're all kind of adapting to this kind of stuff. And this is a story that got a little sensationalized. I just want to walk us back from the edge, from the precipice, Just a little. I feel it's something we should be a bit frustrated about, but I feel like there's some pretty clear reasons why stuff like this happens, and hopefully it illustrates a path forward once we're clear of this main situation that we find ourselves in. So the first article I caught from this, and I think this might actually be a local news investigation team from Tampa Bay sort of breaking the story on this. It's a story about Amazon. So let me go into screen share here. Data shows Amazon raised prices during the situation alongside sellers accused of price gouging. And Amazon has removed 3,900 sellers for violations, even though they seem to be engaging in some of the same business practice. Out of Florida this week, Amazon kicked thousands of sellers off its site for price gouging, and Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody announced she's investigating dozens of sellers amid the growing situation. But the ABC Action News I team has learned that while those sellers were making big profits off customers' fear and misery, Amazon substantially raised its own prices on products like hand sanitizer, protective masks, and toilet paper. So the rest of the article goes on to talk about some of the individual sellers on Amazon, talking about what's going on here. The CEO of Jungle Scout, Greg Mercer, said, quote, "When we look at the data, we saw price increases from both Amazon and third-party sellers. And at one point earlier this month, Amazon listed a 4-pack of toilet paper for $72. So Amazon replied in an email. Amazon is working with state attorneys general and sharing information to help hold price gougers accountable. Amazon has instituted additional manual audits of products in its stores due to the increased risk of price gouging from unscrupulous sellers seeking to evade their automated systems and take advantage of customers. Amazon leverages a number of automated and manual methods to detect potential price gouging in our store. Our selling partners submit billions of price changes every week, and our automated tools scan them on an ongoing basis. So, not a good look in this sort of like, hey, we're all in this together. We should be trying to support each other, and people who are stockpiling. I mean, we talked 2 weeks ago about the individual who had his storeroom full of supplies raided by a local government to redistribute the articles and items he was trying to profit off of during the situation. That kind of profiteering, I feel we can all agree, pretty miserable. And when individuals like that are caught, I feel like we should make something of a public example out of some really ugly behavior. The reason why I wanted to bring this up in terms of Amazon, because Amazon controls such a huge chunk of the online retail space. And so many smaller companies rely on Amazon as the backbone of their infrastructure for pricing, distribution, and retail. I mean, just literally the engine that affords some of these smaller stores some kind of online presence. But at the same time, Amazon gets to benefit from all of that market data and all of that infrastructure, even when when Amazon is the direct competitor to the individual or the smaller company that's selling on Amazon. So, when you have a machine as large as Amazon, I can't believe for a second that individual listings are examined by humans rarely, if at all. And when Amazon's algorithms, under normal conditions, not during the situation that we find ourselves in today, under normal conditions, if there's a sort of a price jump on a certain type of product, I have to believe that there are supercomputers, servers at Amazon that make subtle adjustments to pricing to match what the market's doing, undercut some competitors, make more profits in other sectors. But when we find ourselves in a crisis situation, Amazon has a responsibility to flip the switch on how those algorithms function. we see clearly in this local news piece from the ABC I team, we see very clearly the detrimental effects of letting these software systems run without supervision, run auto, just go full autopilot. I feel like we've talked about similar situations with content with YouTube and how the algorithm at YouTube decides so much, and then it's exceedingly difficult to get any kind of human input on how that operates. And it feels very often as a YouTube creator that these tools are completely out of control. There is no accountability, and that you have to try and untangle the software engineer, the developer, and the coder's whims, but even they probably don't have the greatest global idea of how little changes affect the entirety of that system. Amazon just got burned here. Under normal conditions, this is probably something that benefits Amazon's profits. It should have been a system that was examined very, very quickly at the onset of people stockpiling kit. Oh, and LFA Reviews is in the live chat from LFA. I'm not buying Amazon's story either, some gadget guy. From Matt Tyler, because we all know we can rely on computers to do the right thing. I mean, again, I think it's the right algorithm for a different time. How Amazon prices and competes, and they've got that talent, but it's the wrong solution for the current issues we face. And from Andy, I've only used Amazon once in the last year. It's a bit harder, but it's still doable. And from Mr. Penriquez, have you seen those Amazon brick and mortar stores? All they want to do is have automated everything. I actually took a field trip. An Amazon 4-star opened up in my neighborhood. You can check that out, SomeGadgetGuy.com. Oh, and actually, this is a good read too. I caught this article from Gary the Fireman. The CNBC piece interviewed some former Amazon managers who dealt with compliance and pricing. So yeah, definitely check out that story in addition to this. If I can find the link for it, I'll share it also on in the show notes for this week's show. This was another one that kind of broke a little quietly with everything that's going on, the remote education, the remote work solutions that people are trying to come up with, work from home, school from home. I know in my circles, Zoom came out of nowhere, like, to become the thing that my family and friends are talking about. I mean, Skype, the Skype team kind of missed a golden opportunity to have their product in place. I know FaceTime has been opening up for more group video chatting. Duo just recently updated where you can have, 12 people in a video chat now. But Zoom has run with this situation as one of the foremost solutions to keep people conferenced, to have multiple people in rooms, and to give people better tools to sort of online collaborate. So it was a little disappointing when we saw that Zoom was sort of automatically sharing data to Facebook. So we just recently got word of a Zoom update. This is coming by way of Motherboard, written up by Joseph Cox. Zoom removes code that sends data to Facebook. From the opening of the article, on Friday, video conferencing software Zoom issued an update to its iOS app, which stops it sending certain pieces of data to Facebook. The move comes after a Motherboard analysis of the app found it sent information such as when a user opened the app, their time zone, city, and device details to the social networking giant. When Motherboard analyzed the app, Zoom's privacy policy did not make the data transfer to Facebook clear. This is, hold on, let me get this. This is a quote from a Zoom representative. Zoom takes its users' privacy extremely seriously. We originally implemented the login with Facebook feature using the Facebook SDK in order to provide our users with another convenient way to access our platform. However, we were recently made aware that the Facebook SDK was collecting unnecessary device data. So, I can give Zoom a little. I can give the Zoom developers a little leeway. Their platform and their service is being leveraged like never before. They are iterating and trying to shore up the infrastructure, which keeps their service running. I can see some engineers, prior to this going, hey, you know what? There's a simple, we can just pop in, log in with Facebook. People are familiar with login with Google. Some folks might be turned off by the idea of creating an account, separating out another email and password. We got this, guys. We can plug this in. But it's Facebook. And I just have a problem with the idea that Zoom developers added the Facebook SDK and never thought to check what information Facebook was going to pull out of that. I mean, Apple made that big dog and pony show about their own login credentials and separating out email and personal info. It was a major part of one of their last keynotes, and just how they'll even come up with dummy email addresses so that certain apps or services can't get access just because you want to use a unified platform to log in, share credentials. I feel like Facebook deserves the scrutiny from anyone looking to incorporate Facebook services into their platform, that you turn it on, you check it out, you see if any of your users are inclined to use it, but then you monitor. You watch everything that goes through that pipe utilizing a Facebook SDK. That's the problem. It's not that I feel like, and I seriously doubt that Zoom stood to benefit much of anything by tying their services to Facebook, other than giving users one easier login protocol. That's it. Like, I feel like that was really, truly the only benefit for Zoom engaging in this type of, in utilizing the Facebook SDK. But that doesn't mean you don't follow through. And that's where I'm frustrated. This is their shining moment. They are in the spotlight. So many. My daughter's ballet class streams over Zoom so that she can still practice for the recital, which may or may not happen. Her dance teachers set up Zoom and they're teaching classes remotely so that kids can still interact with each other and talk to the ballet teachers. My daughter's Spanish class, setting up those tools using Zoom so that she can still teach Spanish and talk individually and in a group to all of the kids from my daughter's preschool. My buddy Antoine streamed last night so that 8 of us from my old dance troupe could get together and play Cards Against Humanity online together, and he set up a Zoom conference to make it happen. So again, this is the wrong time to relax your observation and your security and just play ball with Facebook. From App Switch. We take it seriously after we got caught. I added the wah wah. App Switch didn't do that, but I felt it was fitting. From Dave Burns, I bet the link to Facebook is unencrypted. From Andy, like we said in the beginning, no Facebook, or Facebook no, stop it. From Matt Tyler, problem is Facebook owns everything, so is anyone monitoring what's WhatsApp or Instagram? Again, it's not just the individual platforms and services. From what we see here, there are so many tools and so many trackers that websites that try to leverage Facebook for their own benefit end up supporting this Facebook data collection machine. It's one of the things like why I love talking about Firefox. Mozilla With the quantum update for Firefox, Mozilla put out their own Facebook container plugin. Go to Firefox, you go to add-ons, and you go to Facebook container, and you see like this little walled, this little colored icon, and that anything that's trading information with Facebook gets shut down in that web browser. Because you don't even realize, like, I've got 7 browser tabs open. Those tabs all start communicating with the one tab that has some kind of Facebook tracking activity on it. So we even have to compartmentalize against other services that are talking to Facebook. And it's hard to know, it's hard to understand. And it's why, like, the thing I love about the Facebook container is that it just gives me a purple icon when there's a website that is trying to share information on my browsing habits with Facebook. I mean, it's that pervasive. And when we talk about Facebook and we have this kind of insidious tone, it's because of stuff like that it's not just, I don't want to do business with Facebook and I'm not going to share photos on Instagram. You might not have a choice. If you go to another website and they're incorporating some kind of Facebook tracker, Facebook still has a file on you. From Heiki, my Russian lectures are also on Zoom, and we cannot do anything. We cannot do anything about that. So here's the thing. I'm not too angsty about continuing to use Zoom. This seems to have been a limited security issue on iOS. Funnily enough, the people who I feel like probably got this the worst were iPhone and iPad owners. I feel like Zoom has made the corrective action after getting caught. I just hope that this now leads to them being more proactive at protecting their users' privacy. This is a major opportunity for Zoom. And so I don't feel like the takeaway from the situation is, nope, can't use Zoom anymore. But as long as consumers are educated, we understand what the potential risks are, and that the company is being held accountable for lax, not malicious. I don't feel anything about this was a malicious business practice, but it was lax. And that's what's frustrating. Their huge opportunity to become a household name is not the right time to get lazy about monitoring their security policies and their privacy policies. So that's what I hope the takeaway is that not only, for those of us that are sort of locked in on using Zoom for some of these services, that Zoom is under the scrutiny that they're going to better live up to their responsibilities. I hope. So next week on the podcast, we'll see. From Blue Malicious, Juan, that can't be. iOS is so darn secure. Like Macs never get viruses. All right, moving right along. We do have a Facebook story, and I'm bringing this up because, man, media just loves copying a headline without doing much deeper digging. So this was a story that broke on Facebook's philanthropy last week. And, I was talking about how we always have that tone with Facebook and that some of their moves feel kind of insidious. So this is the actual press release from the Facebook Journalism Project. Facebook got a bunch of free positive buzz media just off of this headline. I want you to see this headline. Ready? Let me go back into screen share. Facebook invests additional $100 million to support news industry during the coronavirus. I said it! During the situation. Dang it. This video just got demonetized on YouTube. One more time. Facebook invests additional $100 million. Now, what does that sound like to you? To me, that headline sounds like there is a philanthropy account at Facebook with $100 million in it that they invested $100 million. Why am I being so pedantic? Why am I articulating this like I'm a slow kid? Let me tell you why. Because when we scroll down, the actual contribution from the Facebook Journalism Project reads as, quote, "Today, we're announcing an additional $100 million investment to support the news industry. $25 million in emergency grant funding for local news through the Facebook Journalism Project, and $75 million in additional marketing spend to move money over to news organizations around the world." I don't know what that means. $75 million in additional marketing spend to move money over to news organizations around the world. So my hypothesis, my very unlearned guess, is that Facebook is going to deliver the equivalent of $75 million worth of ads on Facebook. Not that Facebook is putting $100 million into a bucket to give grants to smaller news organizations. Someone tell me someone tell me if that reads any different to you. I'm going to take a sip of water here because my voice is a little raw. It does not read to me like $100 million is going to be made accessible as grants to individual news agencies. I feel like that's a very different headline than Facebook giving away $100 million to help news. For Mr. Penriquez, I just thought, I don't know what that really means. From Heiki, it sounds like you explained. That's what it sounds like to me. And so making $75 million worth of advertising available on Facebook, to me, is not the same as making $75 million available through grants. So, I mean, anything that's going to help, great. But I feel like the headlines have been running away with $100 million, $100 million, investing $100 million. And that's not the same thing. If 75, 3/4 of this amazing philanthropic effort are basically just Facebook paying themselves $75 million, that's not as headline worthy. So $25 million to help local news agencies, that can actually be a huge help. You know, again, for some of these smaller news outlets, especially the ones that aren't, locked up, the few that aren't mega locked up by media conglomerates like Sinclair, awesome. Tens of thousands of dollars in a grant to help out a small news agency or keep a couple reporters staffed. We've been seeing numerous reports of layoffs across the country. There was another one. Someone tell me in the live chat, like another one hit this morning with like another round of just brutal layoffs in the news industry. That's great. I don't want to talk trash about Facebook. $25 million ain't nothing to sneeze at. But for the corporation, which kind of wrecked the business model for a lot of news agencies and helped contribute to the situation that we find ourselves in today, $25 million just doesn't have the same kind of ring to it. So I find this press release of boosting their charitable donation by paying themselves to advertise on behalf of the news agencies that they helped dismantle, it leaves a sour taste in my mouth. From Root Night 5. At this rate, the acronym Shady AF will just mean shady as Facebook. uh, from Matt Tyler, it's $25 million of blackmail money. We'll help with this money, but but you forget we did this. Again, I think Facebook's going to have a ledger of who benefited from their philanthropic efforts, and will be monitoring their content more closely in the future. Yeah, Blue Malicious. The 25 million is fair enough, but the rest sounds confusing and unclear just so they could grab the headline. And that's a bummer. Again, in this time, because the next two stories I have much more positive. I've been extremely critical of multi-billion dollar corporations, ISPs, carriers. There are some significant issues I think we need to fix in how the internet is regulated, net neutrality, broadband distribution. And again, in this time of crisis, in this situation, one of the truisms, the consistent things we can point to is the people who were already most vulnerable in our society continue to slip through the cracks. Kids going to school, their main opportunities to get food, some type of low-level medical care, some access to cleaning facilities and clean water in a first world country like the United States, let alone data, internet, and connectivity and communication, were probably at school. And we don't have good numbers on exactly how many kids fall below that poverty threshold and why our public schools are so taxed to offer these types of services. So, in our current flavor of capitalism, it is refreshing to see a couple companies step up. Not been the biggest fan of Verizon. I feel like they still haven't been held accountable for some not great business practices, especially here in Southern California. This is a step in the right direction for me. So this is directly out of the public policy newsfeed from. Oh, thank you, Gary the Fireman. Gannett announced rolling furloughs today. Oof, super gross. Thanks for that, Gary. I appreciate it. So let me drop this in the live chat here. This is basic. The details are still being worked out, and I hope that this is not just another exercise in getting the headline. But considering some of the recent news I've seen out of Verizon, this is a positive story. From Verizon's own press release, Verizon to provide unlimited internet to LAUSD students without access. Written up by Chris Grondorf. Sorry, Chris, I have mispronounced your last name, almost definitely. Los Angeles Unified School District and Verizon announced today. So whenever I select something for you guys to see in the stream, Verizon wants me to tweet it. So, and see here. Okay, so you got this tweet icon and this Facebook icon, and then the Facebook icon has a little purple fence on it because Firefox is telling me if you click this button, Facebook will be able to track your visit to this site. The Facebook container in action, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just read the article here and stop soapboxing on Facebook. Los Angeles Unified School District and Verizon announced today that they have reached an agreement to provide internet connectivity for all students who have no internet connectivity at home. This agreement is a critical component in the district's plan for students to continue learning as campuses remain closed in response to the situation. Now, the terms of the agreement were not disclosed. Quote, the digital divide is very real. As many as 100,000 of our students lack access to the internet at home, said Austin Butner, superintendent. We must find a way for all students to continue to learn while schools are closed, and this partnership with Verizon will help to do that. Access to distance learning and reliable connectivity is a critical component to the success of the LAUSD's mission, said Andres Irlando, Senior Vice President and President Public Sector and Verizon Connect at Verizon. Verizon is proud to partner with LAUSD to help bridge the digital divide and keep students connected to their teachers, schools, and each other during this unprecedented time. So, that this is a joint press release between Verizon and LAUSD, I am hopeful that there is an actual solution at play. Because Fat Produce brings up an excellent point. They ran out of cellular hotspots to issue out to employees here, so a coworker ended up getting an iPhone XR as their hotspot hardware. The infrastructure, the shipping, the communication, the logistics, the distribution, these are insane challenges. And if our numbers here in Los Angeles are around 100,000 students, the ability to mobilize and to get equipment out to all of those kids is a pretty profound challenge. It's got to be coordinated through LAUSD, and at the same time, we still have to protect things like student privacy. You know, we are trying to give corporate-backed telecommunication solutions to minors. That's a heady challenge. And at some point, the parts of this chain are absolutely going to fail. But making the effort and figuring out how the logistics on this kind of stuff works, that's going to be such a huge benefit to other communities. I mean, with Los Angeles being one of the first that I've heard of to initiate this as a public-facing policy. Yes, it is sort of like a home commercial for Verizon services. If it's a hotspot, or like Andrew was saying, maybe it's a phone and they just give you a cheat sheet on how to turn that phone into a hotspot. But that's going to be a huge benefit and a huge perk for tens of thousands of families in the greater Los Angeles area. And if we can figure out how to do it relatively well, we can work through the teething pains here in Los Angeles. This is going to be a model for how other school districts and other states and other cities around the country are going to be able to replicate this as a program. And this is the right time for a company like Verizon to make this to make this a public policy, to be a good tech citizen, to be a good tech neighbor. And this is giving me a little hope that we might actually have a system here that we can implement. So I want to say fair play. Well done. Kudos. I don't get to say kudos Verizon very often on this podcast, and I feel like when they step up, when they rise to the occasion, I should make an effort to call that out too. LFA reviews, it's a lot to tackle. Godspeed to all involved. Mr. Penriquez, nothing is perfect. Again, I know there are going to be some massive stumbles. You know, LAUSD already has some issues with their technology policy, how they issue gadgets to kids, what they use as educational tools in the classroom. So we can be sure that there are going to be some pretty significant teething pains in mobilizing this initiative. But it's the fact that folks are trying. And I feel like that is the important takeaway from any of these stories. There are companies who are getting a little lazy. There are companies who are trying to grab headlines. And then the companies who are trying deserve that share of the conversation too. Route Night 5. I remember the days where people started bringing up the idea of citywide free Wi-Fi access points. I mean, like the years that San Francisco fought lawsuits from ISPs about offering community-funded broadband at a low level. It's really frustrating. This is why we talk about, those of us who are a little more left-leaning, we talk about how vital telecommunications equipment is, how vital access to the internet is, and why regulating it like a utility makes a lot more sense in the modern era. And hopefully out of this situation, we come back to the table with some more grown-up conversations. The other company I want to bring up, this one's a little more nuanced, but I still feel like this is a positive step. So T-Mobile dangled this carrot back in November of last year just as we saw some of the rocky road for the T-Mobile Sprint merger happening, which should be go now. As far as I know, they should officially be the same company in like another month. But back in November, they teased these little initiatives, new pricing plans, some things which could be potentially pretty disruptive and positive for consumers. Very uncarrier kinds of moves. The T-Mobile Sprint merger hasn't finished yet. It's not finalized yet. They aren't the same company yet. But they are kicking off one of those price plans early. And so this got a lot of positive buzz, then a lot of reactionary buzz. So let me get this queued up here. T-Mobile Connect launches early to help the most vulnerable in America get and stay connected. I just dropped the link in the live chat if anyone wants to follow up here. JMX Warrior. It's great to see T-Mobile introduce a $15 plan is a great step in the USA with a decent amount of data, looking more like what we have in the UK, and it's more affordable. So there is a big asterisk on this, but ultimately I think this is a positive step. And that's exactly what JMX Warrior is pointing to. T-Mobile Connect, part of the new T-Mobile's 5G for Good initiative, is launching ahead of schedule for $15 per month, half the price of the company's lowest smartphone plan, and Metro by T-Mobile is adding new lower-cost options. And so this is the official press release. It's going to be... All right, here, let me get it right here. This is part of 5G for Good. It's a cute little branding by T-Mobile. First planned uncarrier moves for the proposed new T-Mobile, but in response to customer needs in these trying times, the uncarrier is launching it this week. T-Mobile Connect represents a new level of value at $15 per month plus tax for unlimited talk and text plus 2 gigabytes of high-speed smartphone data, including access to T-Mobile's nationwide 5G network. For $25 per month plus tax, customers get 5 gigabytes of high-speed phone data, and T-Mobile Connect also has an annual data upgrade, giving customers an additional 500 meg of monthly data every year at no additional cost for the next 5 years. So, I mean, to kind of break all that down, and I'm going to get just another drink of water here real quick. So, especially for those of you who are watching internationally, data prices in the United States are silly expensive. Maybe not as bad as Canada, but still real pricey. By comparison, I'm on Google Fi for my main SIM card, and that's $30 a month plus $10 per gigabyte of data used, up to 6 gigs of data, and then everything after 6 gig is included. So when I hit $90 before taxes, when I hit $90, then everything after that I don't rack up any additional fees. And then I think I get capped at like 18 gigs of data in a month. And then I get slowed down to like super, super gut rot 3G connectivity. A T-Mobile plan like this is half the price of just the calling and text features that I have on Google Fi. And it's 2 gig of data, where if I were to use 2 gigabytes of data on Google Fi, my monthly bill would be closer to $50. At $15, less than a third the price, that's not bad. But the big asterisk is it's hard capped. So it's not like one of these throttle and slow down plans. It stops at 2 gigabytes of data. So looking at the $25 plan, where the $25 plan gets 5 gig of data, seems to me to be the better overall solution. That's still $5 a month cheaper than my starting price on Google Fi. So this is not, again, we're looking at a company, I was complaining about some companies just going for the headlines and some companies actually trying to step up to do something actually philanthropic. I feel like T-Mobile has landed closer to the philanthropic, but is still pumping out something that is aggressively trying to get the good buzz positive headline. Like they're in that gray space, the Venn diagram overlap between those two extremes. But I still feel this ultimately becomes a more positive move. 5 gigabytes of data is not great, but especially at a time where a lot of us are maybe shelter in place, practicing our social distancing, have access to Wi-Fi. My Google Fi usage has plummeted over the last couple weeks. So if I could save half the price and I'm using way less data, that's not a bad plan in the short term. I would totally have to reevaluate my usage because I was a pretty heavy data user under normal conditions. Once the main flattening the curve policies are finished with the situation, this plan probably wouldn't be a great fit for me. But in the current situation, I'm seriously considering it. We're all looking at ways that we can kind of tighten our belt a little. We can kind of minimize some of the extra spending, and this would cut my wife and I's cell phone bill by roughly 60% over what we're doing with Google Fi, which was already a decently economical solution considering the amount of data we might use in any given month. So I'm actually pretty positive on this. I know there were a lot of headlines that came out like $15 a month plan. Oh, but there's a gotcha. Ooh, scary. I don't think it's that bad. It's not great, but I don't think it's terrible. And here in the United States, we need some help because our cell phone pricing plans are a little out of hand. And these types of moves, I think, kind of bring us back to some idea of reasonable usage to price. Until we have better public policy on how this stuff should be regulated, this is a pretty aggressive move from a free market company to address the reality of what a lot of customers are going through. From Root Knight, the Google Fi plan sounds brutal to me. It's interesting. I stuck with Google Fi because my usage can be very inconsistent. In between phone reviews, I might have a month where I use very, very little data, and then my bill's like $30. Then there are going to be some months where, man, I'm way over that and I'm starting to run into the cap. I'm starting to run into my throttle point in a different month. With those kinds of fluctuations, which are not normal consumer fluctuations, Google Fi kind of made the most sense for me. Being on some kind of metered plan made more sense for my personal use. But the thing I stuck with, because there are other metered plans that probably are a little bit cheaper. The reason why I stuck with Google Fi was kind of like T-Mobile, but your data usage around the world is automatically built into the price of Google Fi. So like if I were on AT&T, if I wanted to travel internationally, I would have to add a ridiculous pay per day or nearly double my smartphone bill every month just to support using the data I'm already paying for internationally. Whereas on Google Fi, it's treated exactly the same. I flew to Taipei. I got a little pop-up on my phone saying, hey, you've got LTE in Taipei. I got stupid fast LTE in Taipei. Flying to Germany. Welcome to Germany. You're going to be on this network and your LTE is exactly the same as it would be on any other carrier. So considering there were zero additional costs and it was LTE, it wasn't like T-Mobile's lowest plan, I think, was 2G or 3G service for most of the countries around the planet. Google was legit just welcome to LTE. your bill stays exactly the same. You don't have to mess with anything. And so that was kind of a perk. And then also just some of the other fun little Google Voicey kinds of perks. Like I still use Hangouts on my phones because going through Fi, I can better coordinate. Like I can text from any Wi-Fi enabled device in my arsenal right now. I want to switch over to Messages, but Messages desktop mode blows. It's real bad. Whereas I can text directly out of Gmail in a browser, pick up a phone that has a different SIM card in it, pick up a phone that doesn't have a SIM card in it, and I can stay connected through all of them. I miss the old school Google Voice approach, and that's why I'm stuck on Hangouts for a while later. It's pros and cons, right? But currently, I'm not doing a lot of international traveling, and I'm also not using a lot of mobile data. So Marie and I are seriously considering looking at maybe some of these. I would probably play it safe and go with the $25 a month plan. But even then, we'd be saving around $15 off the base of our bill. And then if we used more than 2 gig of data for whatever reason, we'd be doing pretty well there too. So before we get to the subreddit block, I just wanted to put this out here. A fun little geeky bit of nerdy tech. Old TV shows are very difficult properties for media, for I'm struggling to come up with the right word, for the people who own the copyright and the IP to redistribute on modern platforms. Depending on how an old show was taped, recorded, edited, formatted, it can be difficult to move that property into HD or UHD streaming territory. I think the best example of that would be Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, do not get the Blu-rays of Buffy. They tried cropping to 16:9. The color work is all wrong. The house that they used to kind of freshen up some of the special effects for higher resolution completely bombed their responsibilities in improving that show. But you go back and you watch like the DVDs, like the standard definition show, it looks better than the HD versions of the show. Another property that has continuously faced some of these challenges as we moved from era to era to era is Star Trek. Because Star Trek was one of those shows that changed from Next Gen to DS9 to Voyager through a number of different recording technologies, from shooting on film to shooting on video to using different frame rates for special effects, moving from model photography to CG, spaceships and consoles and displays. It is very difficult to properly upgrade a show like Star Trek, especially those older, like from the 90s to the early aughts. Those transitions, very, very difficult to manage. So it was just kind of interesting with all of our new technology, algorithms, AI, remastering. This headline just kind of tickled my nerd funny bone. Star Trek Voyager gets an unofficial 4K remaster thanks to AI. This is written up by John Fingus over on Engadget. As with Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Voyager is unlikely to ever get an official high-resolution remaster. The effects were shot on video rather than added to film after the fact, making it much harder to upgrade the quality than it was for the next generation. However, an unofficial project might get relatively close. Series fan Billy Reichard has started processing Voyager with a machine learning program that upgrades the 90s era image quality as much as possible. You won't forget that the show was made for tube TVs, given the aspect ratio, but the AI is surprisingly effective. It produces something you probably wouldn't mind watching on an idle afternoon if you're a Star Trek devotee. And so Billy Reichard, with 151 subscribers on YouTube, put out his algorithm for improving Voyager. There's a little YouTube clip here. I'm not going to play it because I'm already going to get this podcast demonetized. But this doesn't sound like it's outside the realm of possibility. It takes about 6 hours for him to process an episode of Voyager and to sort of up resolution the show. If you had the original content, the original filming content, you could probably reduce that amount of time on some good post-production house mainframes. If there was ever an opportunity for us to get some kind of 4K version of this, the technologies that we have to clean up, to enhance our photos and videos, working with software algorithms to improve that, this could be a viable solution. And even if it's kind of like a halfway version, right? Like Star Wars Despecialized is it was originally launched as a 720p version of Star Wars with all of the special edition CG removed, and it was because they were pulling 1080 content from the new Blu-rays and then merging that with standard definition content. I believe it was the Laserdisc of Star Wars, and you end up at a halfway point where upscaling standard definition to 720p and downscaling 1080p to 720p and then merging those images together looks pretty good. And I think we could probably do something like that with Voyager. Get us down to a great 1080p refresh of that show that was originally distributed for 4:3 standard definition televisions. I think this kind of stuff is nerdy cool. And it kind of plays into Star Trek. Zoom in, enhance, like Blade Runner. We maybe can start doing a little to improve this stuff. I love it. From Fat Produce, I'll keep an eye out on the Pirate Bay for these remasters. From Mr. Penriquez, you don't want older shows in high res because the effects look extremely fake. Now you'll all see the strings. But Voyager was different because Voyager was, I believe, someone please correct me if I'm wrong, was the first version of Trek that relied almost exclusively on CG ships. So this could be the right version of Star Trek to play with upscaling that kind of content. I know the thing that it actually kind of bothers me, Mr. Penriquez, is the original series. Because now the versions of the original series you get don't use that beautiful late 60s model photography that looks super hokey. They've gone to CG. And I don't think it blends very well. You go to these like modern CG special effects, and then you get down on the planet and it's the same old photography. The phaser blasts are just these painted yellow and orange lines like they came out of Batman, biff pow splat. And the creature effects are very very simplistic makeup, the Gorn, giant lizard reptilian people. I don't think that blends well. I don't think it looks great when you cut to like a beautiful establishing shot of the Enterprise in orbit around a gorgeously rendered CG planet. And then you go down to the planet and they have styrofoam rocks for the set. This Voyager, I feel, would be the right Star Trek property to treat this kind of a refresh. Fat Produce also saying the Babylon 5 got screwed in the transition to DVD too. That's sad. And from Fat Produce, this is why I like the Orville. They use a mix of model work and CGI. There's something about model photography that just looks so good. And again, I feel it's that you can't get too silly with your camera work. It's the thing I was always bothered me about like all CG stunts is that the camera goes from being fairly locked off and kind of shaky but stable to then like flying around like crazy. The worst movie for that is Van Helsing. It's a bad movie, but the way that they do CG stunts in Van Helsing is exactly the problem I'm describing. You're on a locked off shot with Hugh Jackman, and then Frankenstein comes swinging in on a cable, and we go from very, very well planned out, coordinated camera shots to spinning 360 degrees super CG camera and then locked off again. And it's so obvious. It is so distracting. And that's what I love about model photography is it kind of like, it locks your orientation and it locks your perspective in a very specific way to keep you focused on the subject. And then you lose that when you go to an all CG environment, all CG camera. You have to be very judicious in how you make those transitions. And I don't feel most filmmakers are. I feel most are using this as a wow effect to impress you with how unbelievable this is. And it makes it less believable. It makes it more obvious that it's fake. And I completely agree. I'm not going to derail this whole podcast because me and Andrew and Fat Produce, we can talk about this for an obnoxiously long period of time. But Seth MacFarlane tones himself down in the Orville. It is disguised as a Galaxy Quest style comedy, but actually has some serious stories and is more like old Trek than current Trek is. And I've got to finish Picard so we can have a stream discussing it. Orville is a really fun blend of Galaxy Quest satire and old school monster of the week, story of the week, anthology science fiction. It really is a refreshing change of pace. It is a fun show. So folks, we got to take a little bit of a break here. This is the part of the podcast where we plug the subreddit, which has seen a pretty decent little jump in subscribers and content and participation. But every podcast has a subreddit. Reddit, the popular social news service where you upvote and downvote content to make it more or less popular. My podcast is no exception. But while some podcasts like to make their subreddits kind of like a fan meet and greet or send me cool stories so that I'll have news to talk about, my subreddit is focused on trying to highlight online content creators who deserve, maybe not even need, but just deserve more attention than what they're currently getting. In the current situation that we find ourselves in, it has never been more critical. It has never been more important to support the people out there that you feel are making good content. And in any way that you can. Sometimes that might be financial if you have the means to afford it. Often it's just more active participation. I'm preaching to the choir, to an amazing chat room right now. This is exactly what I mean. Making the effort to support the people that you enjoy their content. Sharing on your favorite social media services, commenting, subscribing, smashing the bell icon. The extra click from just passively consuming their content. My initiative, I started this a long time ago. The subreddit was actually created in 2014, but really I've only been tweaking it in earnest over the last 2 years. Just a place where we can collect stuff that we think is really cool and is hopefully a resource that people can use to share and promote new content that they might not have seen before. So if you go to reddit.com/r/glowingrectangles, you'll probably find a content creator you've never seen before. So someone recently in this live chat, someone mentioned Jay Williams spending some time with the LG V60. That is our #1 with a bullet top video on glowing rectangles. Jay Williams, 113,000 subscribers. That's a solid. Why am I not? I swore I was subscribed to his channel. That is ridiculous. I do not know how that happened. But I fixed it right here on the live stream, and I just resubscribed to Jay Williams. 24 hours with the LG V60 ThinQ. It's a great hands-on video. He's sharing some thoughts, some feels, pros and cons. I would highly recommend, if you were curious about the phone, adding this video to your watch list. #2. Some dork in a hat, a very punchable face. Doesn't always make it to the top 3, but I made it to the second spot this week. Apparently, the LG V60 has some kind of support for an active pen. People seem to care about that kind of thing. I don't know. It's no big deal. I mean, whatever. LG has a feature, I guess, but really they're not popular, so you should just buy anyone else other than LG because it's not worth it in gimmicks and deal breakers and copying and never innovating. But that's the #2 story. is my stylus video. Matt Tyler getting very aggressive with the hashtags in the live chat there. And rounding out the top 3, we've got the LG V60 ThinQ gaming review. Board at Work has been regularly producing these hands-on gaming reviews for phones, and it's a pretty decent look at what some of the more aggressive gaming gaming usage on a phone would look like. I don't really play a lot of PUBG, but I'm going to be having some conversation about the V60 for gaming specifically, because I feel one of the aspects that often gets overlooked in a gaming review is how the audio works. And I love having pretty visuals, but if I don't have immersive, lag-free, beautiful audio, my gaming experience is significantly curtailed. Just to wrap out the rest of the top 10. Oh, and the reason why I came back into camera here, 3 videos, 1 feature video on the V60, 1 gaming video on the V60, and an overall hands-on with the V60 upvoted on glowing rectangles. I feel that's a slightly different tone of commentary regarding LG than what you would normally find using the YouTube algorithm to sort popular content for you. And for me, that's one of the driving initiatives of glowing rectangles. When you scan through this subreddit, you're going to see a wider diversity of content than just the videos YouTube tries to highlight to keep you on YouTube longer. It's a Facebook style algorithm where it's not based on when the video was published, it's based on what YouTube thinks will keep you engaged longer. I feel like this little baby subreddit, which jumped 15 subscribers over the last week, which is a pretty big jump for this little subreddit, the mission is working, and it makes me very excited. Let me just round out the rest of the top 10. We've got some industry commentary from the SMT, Sneed Mobile Tech, talking about state of the networks and asking for people to participate on what their experiences are on different cell phone carriers. We've got the Android Central. The V60 is a cheaper, quirkier S20 alternative. At number 5, we've got Nubia Red Magic 5G PUBG gaming test. Gaming phones, another segment I'm very excited to be covering in the coming months. My silly Bluetooth speaker, a long-term review of YouTube TV and cutting the cord. And rounding out the top 10, we've got TK Bay's unboxing and first impressions for the Nubia Red Magic 5G. And this video, the fact that it made it to the top 10, Anne Reardon. I have to give a special weekly shout out to Anne Reardon. She hosts How to Cook That. It's a cooking channel. But one of the things that she has made as part of her channel, it's like an initiative that she is spearheading for fans of cooking videos, is to talk about how YouTube is so easily manipulated by clickbaity, low effort, manufactured content. So I'm sure you've seen those videos of like tasty meals or fun food hacks. Maybe it's a GIF on Reddit. And you can do this and put it in your microwave and you dump chocolate into a cup and it turns into a cake. And almost all of those are totally fake. Like the cutesy little high production value recipes that they put together, almost none of them actually function as real recipes when you try them. And she has been spending a lot of time breaking down how this stuff is fake, how you're going to waste food. And every time you watch one of these videos, it just adds money. It just adds ad revenue to these people that are just gaming the YouTube algorithm. This video specifically on our glowing rectangles, I would implore you to watch, because they look at the army of YouTube channels that are breaking, silver play button, gold play button, diamond play button subscribers. We're talking millions of subscribers are all owned by one major media company based out of Russia. And they are becoming an advertising force globally. And their influence on one or two channels, their influence over this subscriber base is larger than PewDiePie's collective viewership. So when we talk about PewDiePie has the biggest channel on YouTube, is the top viewership. Oh no, they don't. It's actually one of these Russian-owned media corporations that makes fake videos, and they've started producing content politically. I don't want to spoil this video. It starts out, she's just breaking down how these recipes don't work. And by the end of the video, we're talking about a mass global media conspiracy. And it's insane. So watch the video. I don't want to steal her thunder. This is an amazing examination of how manipulated our current media distribution is. Please give that video a watch. I'm going to share it. If I can, copy this link. I'm putting it in the live chat here. Check it out. Please check it out. Matt Tyler with some breaking news. OnePlus 8 launch event, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 14th of April, 2020. I'll be watching it. I hope you will be too. From Dave Burns, I noticed this when I started clicking the triple dot menu and using not interested on Samsung videos. That stuff started disappearing. Oh, poor Mr. Mobile. Adichie Anil and Reardon! Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. She's, first of all, I just love her channel. I'm a wannabe foodie. I love to cook in the kitchen. I'll make a mean stew. But her work has just been so scalpel precise, eviscerating to so many of those. Like, you scroll by it on a Reddit feed and you're like, oh yeah, that probably is fake, but it was an entertaining little GIF to watch. No idea that the backbone, the corporation, the shadow corporation behind all of these are just like sweatshop farming video after video after video, compilation after compilation after compilation, making YouTube channels that refer to other YouTube channels, and they're all spider webbed together. And now they're also getting deeper and deeper into like political advertising. And again, I don't want to spoil it. Oh my God. More need you to see this. Yeah, I want to talk to you about Star Trek Picard, but I wish more people were watching this so we could also talk about that too, is what I'm saying. So, DTNL, I love Anne. Did you see that mini kitchen she made from scratch? She is so talented. Again, the fun stuff that she actually does on her channel too. Like, if you want to, the video I loved was she made a super huge giant Snickers. And like, I really need to shove my face into that as aggressively as I possibly can. I need fistfuls of nougat in my face right now. But again, I just wanted to highlight this. I just wanted to point it out because I'm so excited by the variety of content that is starting to build on my little subreddit here. And I hope and pray and implore those of you listening and those of you who are inclined to share this kind of stuff to help keep this mission going. Maybe give the subreddit a share every now and then, but then also highlighting the content creators that you care about, the people you feel deserve more attention. Don't be stingy with the upvotes. If you share a video, take a second just to scroll through the rest of the subreddit and click a few other upvotes to help promote this content, give it more visibility, better search engine optimization. These creators need help. You've got food channels trying to educate consumers about media manipulation. That's how weird this media landscape has gotten. And we share that with people who enjoy cooking content. The people who make real content are getting squashed by people making fake, listicle, BuzzFeedy nonsense. So if we don't want to lose these types of content creators, we need to support them. We need to share them. And when we can, we need to kick them a buck or buy them a cup of coffee or give them a special subscription or a shout out or a thumbs up. Anything we can do. Because I don't want to live in a world where an Anne Reardon can't monetize her traffic. And that when I look for cooking stuff on YouTube, it's just, dominated by stuff that isn't real, by fake recipe channels. That's the worst media dystopia that I can imagine. So Mr. Penriquez says, don't eat the Snickers, eat a Three Musketeers. Now, if I were buying a supermarket candy bar, I would agree with you, but my personal favorite is the Baby Ruth, so that's what I'm going to go for first. But if I were making an enormous version, my own homemade enormous version, her video on making a platter-sized Snickers, pretty stinking cool. Again, don't just shout about your favorite candy bars. Check out Ann Reardon's video about making a monster Snickers. It's fun. I think you'll agree. All right, let's get into some gadget commentary here. I'm already running way long. LFA was Ruth, baby. Aditya, no, one more just because I cannot sing her praises enough. Anne is more of a scientist than just a chef. Anne reminds me very much of like an Alton Brown. If you don't know who Alton Brown is, he is like Mr. Wizard for food. Not just, hey, you mix these ingredients together and the sodium bicarbonate helps kind of keep things airier. No. He is going to give you the actual scientific breakdown of how food works and why food is so entertaining. And Ann Reardon feels like she is in exactly the same kind of category, the same kind of mindset where it's not just, oh, you kind of slap some stuff into a bowl and you kind of pat it and it should look kind of like this. She's very good at explaining why things should work. So when she's debunking these videos, these fake recipes, it's not just that she tries it and it fails, because then we could just say, well, maybe she just didn't do it right. She is equipped to explain why this thing doesn't function. There was one where it was like a sweet potato bread. She's like, there's no way that could work. And it won't work because of this. And she explains why. And then she shows what it should really look like if you did it for real. That's amazing. She, again, for YouTube comparison, she's like Gary Explains for food. Just do it. I mean, I don't even care if you don't like to cook. You will find those videos entertaining because she is knowledgeable and she knows WTF she's talking about. Okay, moving right along. I apologize, you'll probably hear the leaf blowers. There are no leaves to blow. Okay. Let's just move on. Mr. Penriquez, chefs are scientists. Brown is amazing. Alton Brown is my absolute favorite television watch. But like I said, went really, really long on housekeeping. I went a little long on the subreddit. I went super long on my fanboyism and love for Ann Reardon. Let's talk about some gadgets. I want to start off with the P40. While I take leaf blowers know no rest. Truer words, my friend. Truer words. Real quick, those of you in the Twitch, I'm going to drink some water. What is the one sentence reaction you had to the news of the Huawei P40? Ready, go. And hopefully the leaf blowers will pass by my window super, super loud. They're just idling right outside my window. This is terrible. This is the worst podcasting ever, but I've got to take a break. Come on, let me see those comments. I've got one comment here from Def Burns. One sentence. Your reaction. Huawei P40. Okay, we've got some comments here. I can see them in the live stream. Def Burns, that was the saddest live event I've ever watched. Mr. Penriquez, Samsung, question mark. Fat Produce, it'd be great if you could get reliable Google services on the P40 Pro. JMX Warrior, I believe this is sort of like a reviewer quote, but there's no Google services. Goran Petrovic, I want to see a drop test for this one. Root Knight 5, the punch hole camera is offensive. Just give me a notch at this point. Benefit of the Doubt, a supercharged Lambo with an Ising engine? With a missing engine. There we go. Benefit of the Doubt, everyone say hey to Adam Dowd, my buddy, my bro from Pocket Now. He's starting up his own podcast. In the audio version of the podcast, this is roughly where you would actually hear a shout out to his podcast. I just don't equip my current show to run live ads like that. Charlie Spirit song, more like yikes. Noob Master, it will be cheaper. If it will be cheaper because it doesn't have Google, I'll buy it. Aditya NL, Huawei launched a new device? JK, excited about the camera. Tree of Palm 67, but why with the double punch? Tech Levin Mama, ooh, the P30 will be cheaper. Vasicos 8, nothing but camera. Our Rue Sunshine, best camera for stills. And Matt Tyler, I think we'll just wrapping it up here. Ugly AF. Okay. I am very conflicted on the Huawei P40. You know how I turn to LG devices for premium audio and a great camera app, which is utilizing usually fairly current, if slightly behind camera hardware. The V60 is another interesting conversation in trading some features for price. This is going to be a really difficult year for the premium market, in part because of component pricing, distribution pricing, shipping. But I worry about Huawei taking an iterative approach to their chipset. So last year we started seeing the Kirin 990. This year the P40 continues with the Kirin 990 5G. And where the Kirin in years past was able to leapfrog the same year Qualcomm chipset, this year feels like the 990 is going to be in a bit more of a holding pattern, opposite the Exynos getting a little bit better, and the Snapdragon 865 really impressing. Like, some of the improvements on the 865 are pretty remarkable. And I don't want to judge the P40 just on the chipset, because I'm also going to be the guy who's talking about 700 series Snapdragons, 600 series Snapdragons, mid-ranger phones that are offering near flagship grade performance. But the reason I run into this problem, when I run into this issue, is seeing Huawei play the Samsung game at the upper tier. Getting to a phone like the P40 Plus, which is going to be roughly 1,400 euro. I feel you need to have some of the conversations about a P40 Plus that have those criticisms that we shared with the Galaxy S20 Ultra. $1,400 is not a price tier to be experimenting with features and to be figuring out your manufacturing and your software while people might buy the phone and using them as beta testers. $1,400 needs to be a pretty button-up and finished device. So I just kind of want to go through the Huawei website here. I don't have a P40. I'm going to talk to TK. Maybe if he's got his as a loaner, or if he's got it as a review unit, maybe I can piggyback on his for a little bit. I'm very curious, but I am, like I said, I am concerned. So let me go into screen share here. This is the P40 Pro on the Huawei website. We can go between P40 and P40 Plus. P40 Pro Plus. Blech. So many different I'm glad my mic is over my head, because there'd be a lot of P-pops on this segment. First of all, I do not like this design implementation, this weird rectangular stovetop. I understand that we need more depth. These larger camera sensors need more clearance, but I just don't like this rectangular cutout that we're starting to see on more and more phones. Again, starting with the Galaxy S20. But the Leica badging, the still photography, I do genuinely believe this will probably be one of the best still photo performers of the year. But I'm looking at this rounded, curvy glass, trying to hide bezels, but incorporating corner elements. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I love this design implementation on a P series. The Mate series used to have these wonderful sort of chunky corners on the cases. So the case that would pop around the back of the phone would have these kind of scoops, like especially on the Mate 9. I thought that looked really, really good. I'm not sure I love it as just a general design accent for a glass on glass. Oh, this is a better look at that. The flowing wonder in your hand. So the screen curves to the sides, giving you a little bit less grip to hold the phone. But then the corners, it scoops up almost as if there's like a bracket that holds the screen in place. What do they call this? The quad curve overflow display. That is a very clumsy brand name for for your screen. But it's a 1200p. What is it? It's higher than 1080p, but slightly lower resolution than Quad HD, and it will feature a 90 hertz refresh rate. And here's a trio of the colors that are coming out. The P series has always been their fashion phone, and I miss like the P10 days because I think those were some of the more innovative designs. Now everything kind of looks the same. The Mate and the P series don't look as different as they used to. But I really like the deep sea blue. Again, I'm always going to be a sucker for a blue or a blue gradient on a phone. But just that super large stovetop wart on the back of the phone, I don't know, it's just kind of a bummer. I honestly, I keep saying this, but I wouldn't mind the rear of the device just being flush and then maybe using that extra fraction of a millimeter of depth to include a slightly larger battery. From Matt Tyler, yeah, why curve all sides but not the corners, and then have an uneven bezel? Have a massive hole punch instead of just a forehead or a notch. There's no need to do this phone. Awful design. Again, as like an architectural experiment, there's some really interesting design work happening, but I'm like I said, I'm really conflicted. 50 megapixel ultra vision camera, the 1/1.28 inch ultra vision sensor. So this is just the P40 Pro, and that's a huge sensor to have on the regular version of the phone. I'm very excited to see what this can actually do in operation. I just wish the housing for this camera module wasn't so odd. Is this going to show us the sensor? All day full view super definition. Okay, so yeah, this is just another follow up. 2.44 micron pixels now. We were all excited about like ultra pixels on an HTC. They've gotten super big. 2.44 micron is getting real big. So again, I'm very excited about this. But I'll be curious to see how other aspects. I'm going to try and scroll through a little faster. Talking about low light, having a periscope zoom so we can have the 10x zoom, an AI portrait studio. And I like that some of these photos actually look like they were taken from the phone. So you can see like around her eye and around her eye that there is that sort of, that slightly paint dab splotchiness to the noise reduction. But that I'm assuming that these were actually taken from the phone. Because we know Huawei has also been caught with a few shenanigans using DSLR photography to show off their phones. A new selfie camera that shoots 4K video. I don't really care about selfie cameras, blah, blah, blah. And that this is going to be a 4K 60 frame per second video shooter. I'll be curious to see how this works too, because this has been one area where Huawei has still been consistently behind. Their video has never been great. I would say 1 or 2 generations behind the rest of their competition. And when I start playing with 4K 60 video on the V60, it looks really good. But catching up on night sight features, low light photography has always been a huge advantage for Huawei. But then this Kirin 990, ultimate performance for a real experience on a 7 nanometer plus. And I look at stuff like this. I love this photo right here. So let's say you want to play some games, and games will go full screen on your wraparound. How do you hold the phone? There are no bezels. So this image right here with the phone just sort of lightly cradled, gaming doesn't really work like that. You need something to hold the phone with. And I love that one of the thumbs is diagonally kind of covering the hole punch for the selfie camera, because the screen goes all the way out to the edges. So if the app goes full screen and there is no border built into the app, then yeah, the hole punch is gonna block stuff right where one of your thumbs would likely be interacting with like a D-pad or an analog stick in your favorite games. So that's not great. But yeah, a 4,200 milliamp hour power supply, battery, not bad. That's pretty good. 27 watt wireless charging, 40 watt supercharging. Huawei battery tech is super fast. It's super, it's great. It's going to be IP68, water resistant. Not all of the P series have always been water resistant, and proper face unlock with an in-display fingerprint sensor. I understand why the hole punch is so big to have proper face unlock, but I think a lot of folks are right. Like, going to a notch probably would have been less disruptive for a lot of apps that go full screen. So, from Rue Sunshine, oh, you just play with a Bluetooth controller. Oh, that's so easy. There's your problem. You just didn't buy a $50 Bluetooth controller to pair with your, I guess this would be more like $1,000 or €1,200 smartphone, the P40 Plus Pro Plus. You just need to add extra accessories to fix the things that Huawei broke by making their device so svelte. From Matt Tyler, phones all screen with built-in hover tech on the back because you can't hold them anymore. So my reactions. I am very anxiously excited to see some of the photo performance from the P40 and the P40 Pro Plus. I am a little concerned about some of their claims for improving video and improving some of their AI processing and some of these really sort of the more graphics intensive stuff when built around that Kirin 990. It does feel like kind of an odd iterative year for Huawei hardware, but still with technologies that command these top tier prices. Incorporating 5G modems. I mean, Samsung, LG, we're seeing these crazy high prices on phones largely because of how Qualcomm has divided the processor from the radio and 5G support, licensing all of those technologies. Huawei looks like they're in a similar boat. You've got the Kirin 990 and then the Kirin 990 5G. This is going to be an expensive transition at all market levels, but at the top premium end of the market, we're going to feel the stab, the wallet busting stab of those prices very, very readily there. When you factor in all of the rest of the technologies and design and R&D and aesthetics and screen, 90 hertz refresh rate, wraparound display, that stuff costs money. I'm just now becoming increasingly critical as to what the consumer benefit is. Wrapping the screen around the edges, making it more difficult to hold, having to add a larger bumper case just to bring back the bezels that they work so hard to remove. I've got real concerns. So I'm hoping I can spend a little time with one, maybe next month or the month following. But funnily enough, I mean, this is the silliest part of this whole conversation. The concern that I have the least is not having Google services on it. When I'm looking at like the price performance and the hardware itself and the ergonomics of using what's going to be a fairly large phone, I'm way more concerned about that. And again, I'm so concerned about that. Like, I kind of keep forgetting, Oh, and by the way, no Google services. I'm not so hung up on that. I've personally been trying to find alternatives. Like I use Firefox as my browser. I like firing up Here Maps. I like Here Maps as an alternative to Google Maps. I use OneDrive for my cloud backups and my storage. I mean, I still use Office as my main document solution, especially with the recent update to Office delivering better multi-screen, dual screen support. I feel like at no other time could Huawei make a better argument for using alternative services to Google. And I'm still concerned about the offering here, its market position, and what this phone is trying to accomplish. I'm having the hardest time with some of these ultra devices. When a phone starts breaking $1,200, $1,400, I'm struggling more than in years past to imagine who that phone might be for. I'm sure this is going to be the most amazing, perfect fit gadget for someone. And I'm struggling to identify who that person might be, is why I'm angsty about phones like this. Okay, we got some comments in here. Let me go through some of these comments. From Maru Sunshine, seems the blueprint for the S20 Ultra reached the wrong manufacturing team. From Matt Tyler, who thinks of the names for cameras and screens? Full Vision, Retina, XDA, bloody Apple Mark 7 display, full vision camera, Illuminate vision camera. Dave Burns, this hardware is gorgeous, but joke's on you. You don't hold the phone. Noob Master, I think a lot of us in this live chat would agree. It's really past time that we let the curved displays go. For Matt Tyler, I'm interested in seeing how case designs will work with the screen curving at the top and bottom, to be honest. And if you ever saw the snap-on plastic case for the Mate 9, I think it's going to look like that, where like you got these kind of ears that kind of clip to the corners. The image that they show, like get the best accessories, are showing the backs of the phone, precisely because of your concern there. It's going to look kind of like little ears sort of folding over into the corners. Might not be the most distinguished look for a gadget that's built on this type of aesthetic and design that looks really cool in photos. Probably not the most practical device to hold. Matt Tyler, case and screen protector manufacturers, P40 Pro press release. Oh, damn. From Dave Burns, Microsoft services will still work on Huawei, right? Diminishing returns for most people on refresh rate is around 144 hertz, but for Twitch gaming, it's nice. I'm not sure if Microsoft, if you sideload a Microsoft app on a Huawei, I honestly don't know what will happen. But the last Huawei that I really spent time with was the regular Mate 20. And I was a really big fan of the Honor that year too, but I haven't had access. I mean, the last thing Huawei talked about sending me were those free buds. Like, hey, you do audio reviews, here are earbuds. And I wrote some emails back and forth with the Huawei PR team. I had some concerns and I couldn't show off some of the features. Like the Mate 20 that I had access to stopped getting updates. So you had to have the most recent EMUI update to also use the little FreeBuds chip so that you could do auto pairing like AirPods. And like I couldn't even show that. And like if you want me to do a video on this video is going to be really incomplete. And I can't in good conscience not comment on some of these issues with the product. And then they went radio silent. Like there was no attempt at addressing some of these concerns. And it's a bummer because I love my media pad. I really like my MateBook. These are products that I genuinely show off in my reviews very, very frequently. And I enjoy using them because I think they're really good products. And their phone team has just gone radio silent with me. Like, I can't get a reply. Actually, now that I say this, maybe I'll send an email out today and just see if we can clear the air. But it's disappointing. Now I feel is an exciting time to try an alternative. Like, if we're gonna get out of like a Samsung Apple duopoly, now's the right time to be examining other manufacturers' options and to find other solutions and to see other types of competition. And here's one that's not relying on Google services. Internationally, I feel like that's an important talking point with Google's perception in other markets around the world. I'll let you know if I get one. From Q3 Becker, Huawei were pushing hard on marketing in Canada, but I haven't heard a thing lately. I don't think they'll enter the Canadian market without Google services. That that was happening here too. We saw it with the Mate 10 Pro, and I was at Newegg where they were working out distribution to sell Unlocked on Newegg, and they were working out their deal with AT&T, and then that whole deal just got nuked. It was with the Mate 20 that they basically just gave up. Like, there were attempts to try and break into North America here in the United States, and then they just walked away. So I really didn't intend for that to be as sort of sigh-inducing, but no, I feel like a number of us are all on kind of the same page here. Some color me concerned, but I'm still like, I'm still fascinated. I'm still aggressively desiring to get my hands on that camera, just because those Huawei still shooters have consistently been so good. I'm hoping they catch up in other areas, and maybe these spec sheet woes and these design implementations are just aren't as precious concerns as I'm making them out to be. We'll see. Dave Burns, we're trapped in sigh. Another from one sigh-inducing story to another sigh-inducing story. Someone was asking about this at the beginning of the podcast. I feel like a rose by any other name would smell just as sweetly. So the headlines on this have been a little difficult to decipher and to untangle. But yeah, I'm a fan of LG products. They make phones for me, so I continue to enjoy using them. This is coming by way of the Korea Times. Do I have a byline on this story? Written up by Kim Hyun Bin. LG to halt G-series smartphone production. LG will end production of its flagship G-series smartphone and introduce a new mass premium product in the first half of the year, according to industry and company sources Sunday. The move is aimed at better appealing to consumers and in turn overcome a close to 5-year deficit in smartphone market. The G-series was introduced in 2012 with the Optimus G, but after 8 years, it will come to an end and reportedly fold into the V series. Get it? Fold into the V series? Get it? Because V series fold, it's going to fold in. Okay, that's enough from me. Sorry. According to the company, LG plans to introduce mass premium brands or low-cost premium phones after scrapping the G series. The release date of the new model has not been confirmed, but industry watchers expect it to be introduced in May for the first time as a 5th generation, a 5G phone. This vibes really well with a number of the other rumors and leaks and stories that we've been seeing about LG. I don't think gadget reviewers are properly detailing the inflated costs coming with this 5G transition. Again, why Samsung phones, the Galaxy S series, are so expensive this year, starting at $999, and Samsung not even bothering to put out a Galaxy S20e. it doesn't make a lot of sense to include that 865 and the separate modem and then look at compromising on other specs and look at all of the gnashing of teeth and clutching of pearls and twisting of undies when the V60 only has the 1080p display. I feel some of the ire is a bit misdirected. If we want to rein in costs and use an 865 with a 5G modem, we're looking at some compromises in other places. I am very positive on the idea of the Pixel 5 moving to a Snapdragon 700 series. I keep saying this, and I feel like you folks here in the chat are feeling me on this. When you handle a Pixel 3a with a Snapdragon 600 series processor, it does not feel any different from substantially more expensive phones when you're just navigating the basics. When you're, and even into some moderate heavy use, when you're interacting on social media, when you're sharing photos and videos, when you're streaming content, when you're, it still renders 1080p video as faster than my laptop in most situations. It starts to bog down under aggressive multitasking and high-end graphics for gaming. Everything else, that phone feels just like $800 devices of the same generation. If Google wants to move to a Snapdragon 700 series, especially the 765, which is almost the same in terms of power as a Snapdragon 855, we're going to be fine. So this to me would be a very positive move if LG were to pivot on what the G series represented. Increasingly, especially as we got to the end of last year, the the G8S and G8X were essentially V series clones for different regions. The G8X is very, very similar to a V50. I mean, it's just a couple component part swaps, but they're the same size phone and they almost fit in the same cases. The buttons don't line up, and that's very frustrating. The G and the V have been coming to this nexus point. If LG really does want to boost their numbers and improve their market share and get back in consumers' hands, following Google with like a Pixel 3a experiment and then a more modestly priced premium upper mid-ranger, they're assuming that this is going to be somewhere in the $650 territory price. So again, a nice, powerful phone with 5G coming in at under $700 is the much smarter play. If it's a K series, if it's a G but gimped, it doesn't really matter what we call it at this point. I just hope that we get one option that's a little bit smaller because the V60s are really big. But that to me would be the right pivot to make. I'll be sad if the G moniker goes away, but also I think it would be handy for LG to kind of rebrand, to pivot, to soft reboot. They're not gonna fight for mindshare against Motorola because Motorola still calls their G phones just G and a number. I think that's one of the reasons why they tried to add ThinQ so hard, right? So the search on it wouldn't just be G6 or G7, it would be G8 ThinQ. Doesn't work. Everyone just calls it the LG G8, and then you also have to compare that against a Moto G8, and search gets a little weird when it's just a letter and a number, and they're the same. So, let's really, laying our cards on the table, $650. I would assume 1080p display. I don't know if they'll try and add any second screen functionality, but let's say they don't. Dual camera system, but upgraded camera, quad DAC, so amazing headphone performance. Let's use the stereo speakers from the V60. We'll still have IP rating, mil standard rating, because all LG phones are rated 810G. Hopefully at least 25 watt fast charging. It's pretty good. The V60 is no slouch when you top off that battery. $650 for a phone that's as powerful as an 855. That works for me. I think that's a good place for LG to fight. And then they're in much better territory to go head to head against like the upcoming OnePlus 8. We got to get the tech enthusiast specs nerds somewhat untangled from just, I need the top end chipset. What do you do on your phone? I watch you on YouTube. I mean, like, we have been so crazy overbuying for compute power on our phones. You're just primed. Like, the only way I'm going to have an even halfway reasonable experience is if I buy the highest end chipset. And that's not true anymore. I would say since the Snapdragon 636, the mid-range has been in wonderful consumer territory. And with the new 660s and the new 760s, it is really good. Those are stonking powerful phones. You will not feel compromised making it through your day at that tier. And then, for nerds like me who are rendering 4K video from their phones on the regular, the 865 makes more sense as a niche, high-end workstation solution. But the bread and butter, 660 and 760, are real good. They're great chipsets. And I know that Pixel and LG are just going to get slammed by whatever tech elite are out there just because of the labels on the phone. Just because they're Pixels and LGs. And then there'll be some side comment about how like the new Galaxy A series are looking pretty good. Yeah, like the Galaxy A 5G with that 700 series Snapdragon, well, that's the right move. Samsung should be applauded for making a cheaper phone with 5G. Oh, but the Pixel and the LG, those are garbage. Don't buy those. You heard it here first, folks. Those are your reviews for the end of 2020 in a nutshell. That's a great point from Def Burns. The 765 will have a weaker GPU than the Snapdragon 855. But again, I think for the core market, you're not going to be punished too poorly. Like I said, the Pixel 3a just feels so stinking fast. And then you see what's inside of it, and it has no business being that smooth. Aditya Anil, I want a quad DAC, wide-angle camera, and LG's flagship camera software, and I'll buy it. Again, the services, like I think that would be a good combo. So Goran Petrovic, there's one problem with the downgraded G in 2020, UFS 2.1, DDR4 RAM, full HD. Why would I buy it if I have everything in a 2018 LG G7? Well, first of all, your CPU power would still be a bump over the G7. If it's the upgraded camera sensor, that would still be a bump over the G7. And then you'd be reaching feature parity against a phone that's getting to be several years old. So I feel it's okay if price to performance is a lateral move. I remember the G7 launched at the upper end of pricing with the Snapdragon 845. And this will be launching at medium pricing for a 2020 phone with CPU performance closer to an 855. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be exact. But if you're replacing your LG G7, you can hold on to your G7. That's always going to be an option too. You can also shop for a used or a refurbed G7. Still going to be an option. You can find stinking great prices on an LG G8 if you wanted to flip it that way too. But you're looking at the most current phone with the best potential for future updates and future software support with some future proofing for 5G, because that will start to matter in more markets. I mean, over the next 2 years, we're going to see aggressive 5G rollout because that's where carriers are really going to start making money again on bumping up prices for connections and bills and however you do your service in your area. All of those things tied together, it might be a lateral move for a lot of features, for a lot of power, for a lot of those individual one-to-one spec sheets. But do you want to spend $1,000 on a phone that's going to be feature parity with a few of the perks on a G7? Or do you look at dropping that down into the mid 600s? Because that's kind of where pricing was the G7 days. Wasn't the G7 like a $799 phone originally full retail? So an LG launches full retail at $650. What do you think the pricing is going to be on a carrier deal for that phone? I think it's going to be pretty cheap. Imagine a BOGO with a G9 replacement. Phone launches at $650, but you get one free. It's a $325 phone. At $325 to get you and your spouse an LG upper mid-ranger, I don't think that's too rough. Again, the V60 launched on T-Mobile as a BOGO. You got two of these for $799. Two. But LGs are too expensive. All right. I've got some internet freebies. Man, this podcast is crazy long. So wrapping up some LG commentary, I really did want to point out I did a video. Oh, I lost my link because I shared Brandon's link. Hold on, let me get back to my video. Oh, he's talking about Brandon. Oh, Brandon, I make wacky thumbnails. I'm so cool. It's great videos, guys. You should really watch Brandon's stuff. Let me just pull this up. So I did this V60 to V50 comparison. I'll drop the link in right here. And I showed off a couple photo samples. And here, let me queue up here. Let me mute this. And so I don't think losing a telephoto zoom camera is much of a compromise. So I showed this off. This is the establishing shot. This is phone A at 2x zoom. This is phone B at 2x zoom. And I've got comments in here. They're loading very slowly, but people trying to guess which phone was which, and just talking about which phone they liked better. The number of people who got the answer right fell roughly into kind of coin flip guess territory. There was not a clear consensus on which phone was which, and which phone had the better zoom. Some people liked one version of the zoom better than the other. I purposely chose two samples to illustrate the differences between indoor photography in medium light, because I think I keep the lab, the gadget lab, pretty well lit. I've got 3 China balls going on here in one room, and outdoor daylight photography. For all the people complaining about the V60 not having a telephoto zoom sensor, one of the critical things that a lot of people still don't understand is that most phones will switch from the telephoto sensor to the main sensor in mixed or dim lighting conditions. And that includes good, bright indoor lighting. As soon as the phone detects that it does not have optimal sunlight directly on your subject, it switches to the main camera sensor, crops that photo, and then blows up that image, because that is still a higher quality image than what the zoom sensor on its own can accomplish. Samsung has done a very good job this year correcting for that issue, and Apple did a reasonably good job correcting for that on the iPhone 11 Pro. The rest of the smartphone industry has basically been adding cost to a phone to give you a sensor that you will rarely use. unless you only use it in direct, bright daylight conditions. So I did one photo here indoors. We should be able to see some clear differences between those two phones and how they shoot. And then I did one outdoors, and we should see different performance in bright daylight. So let's jump to some samples. I'm going to try and share these directly. I'm not sure this is going to work. I've never played with the photo slideshow on OBS, but let's give it a try. So this is just to start. Let me go all the way back here to the beginning because I thought it would reset, and it did not. So here is the establishing shot. This was actually shot from phone A, but I didn't feel like that was important to show the differences in just the normal standard view. So here is phone A at 2x zoom and phone B at 2x zoom. And honestly, I'd call this a wash. At 2x zoom, both of these are in the same ballpark. Pros and cons, some subtle differences. You have to really pixel peep to see some of the soft edging around the slinky. But then we get to 10x zoom. And this is 10x zoom from phone A and 10x zoom from phone B. Phone A, phone B. Q3 Becker, this is great audio content. I know, people listening to the audio version of this, I'll probably cut this segment and just link to a trimmed down YouTube version of this. Phone A, phone B. If you want to see that side by side, here is phone A next to phone B. Now, someone in the live chat here, which one do you think looks better, phone A or phone B? Anyone, drop some comments. I'm going to take another sip of water here because my voice is getting real fuzzy. Matt Tyler likes phone B, but pretty much everyone else likes phone A. And Fat Produce says, I think phone B is the V50 telephoto. So here's what's tricky. Phone B is the V50. The V50 does not use the telephoto in bright indoor lighting because that phone switches you over to the main camera sensor and then crops and upscales based on how far you zoom. The image degradation on that, on a lower 12 megapixel camera sensor, is absolutely deal breaking. Zoom on most phone cameras looks like garbage because of this camera switching, cropping, zooming, upscaling trick. And it's why we don't really see many improvements until we get to significantly larger zoom sensors or some kind of periscoping zoom, where there are functional moving lens elements inside the phone. Indoors, almost all phone cameras, with the exception, the iPhone 11 Pro still does switch to the main camera sensor in a handful of situations, but Apple got a lot better about just trying to power through. Where at night, as long as you've got street lights, it does, an insane burst of raw images to image stack on top. And it sometimes works, and sometimes it'll just switch you back to the main camera sensor if it thinks it's too dim. That V60 test, where having substantially more resolution, yeah, the photo gets a little bit grainier, but there is substantially more information and detail in this image. When you really look at, this isn't just sharpening. Like Samsung likes to do that trick. They just dump on a bunch of sharpening and then, oh yeah, it's more detail and it's more crisp. It's usually not. This is legitimately more information than what the V50 is able to accomplish, and that's the benefit of that crazy huge resolution bump. That zoom crop is actually more functional than where we were last year with these 12 megapixel sensors. Um, from Matt Tyler, I liked B more. A was too yellow. Really? Really? Because it is a gold microphone. Hold on, Matt, I need you to see this. It's a yellow microphone, Matt. Do I I've got like a white paper towel here. Hold on, let me see if I can make this even clearer. Like it's a golden copper trim, man. So not only did the V50 blur all of the detail of the microphone, it got the color wrong, Matt. Everyone give Matt a shout out. Matt is my buddy. I don't mean to pick on him. That kind of stuff is hilarious. Matt needs a good pat on the back. So that brings us to the other comparison and why I purposely picked a daylight photo. Let me go back into screen sharing here. So then we did a daylight comparison, and let me see if I can get this. There we go. So phone A and phone B are the same. So A is the V60 and B is the V50. I didn't want to play any silly gimmicky games like that. You know, phone A is phone A is phone A. And then so this is at the full standard. Both of these are HDR locked. I felt that this was important too because we've got a lot of contrast between the darker bark on the tree and then clouds directly behind. So then we go to 2x and we can see some of the differences. So the image actually, the metering changes a little bit more on the V60 than when the V50 switches. And actually, when we switch to the zoom sensor, the V50 is well represented here. But then we want to go to the full extreme, and this is V60 at 10x versus V50 at 10x. And I gotta say, the V50 is ever so slightly a little bit sharper with just a little bit more information retained. But this is the kind of daylight, bright, and I've got cloudy, it's a cloudy day, but it's a soft, bright light that's hitting both of these. I like the processing on the V60 better, but the detail is a little softer. Now, LG is also playing a bit of a Samsung game here where I'll try and find a way to host the actual images so you can do your own pixel peeping. But there is more sharpening happening on the V50 photo also. But ultimately, I do believe in direct sun, bright light conditions, the V50 captures just a tiny bit more image, like just a little bit more information. Like there is more actual photo there, less that it's been blown up. The resolution's been blown up. So when you factor in all of the costs on the camera module on a phone, and you're not going to spend $1,400 on a periscoping, telescoping zoom camera, we are at $799. Would you add $50 for a zoom sensor that gives you an almost imperceptibly tiny advantage in direct sunlight and is actually a poorer performer in indoor lighting? Or do we just accept that pixel cropping for zoom is still a totally viable solution in 2020? Do you make this phone more expensive to add a whole extra camera on this device that is only a tiny advantage under the most optimal shooting conditions? It's so close. I mean, V50 to V60, a proper standalone telephoto camera sensor to pixel cropping on a higher resolution sensor. I think if I were scrolling through my Instagram feed and I saw those two photos, they would be indistinguishable from each other. I have to pixel peep on the actual images that are on this device to really go and say, oh yeah, the bark here and the way that the focus fall off, and there's a tiny bit of fringing, and oh, I guess like this kind of flare. Do you want to make this phone more expensive? If that's the benefit we're really looking at. My vote would be no. But maybe I'm off. I don't know. Let me just go through some of these I got. So Aditya NL, I like B when it comes to the 2X. From Heikki, it seems that the V60 has warmer color temperature than the V50. That has been a consistent talking point. LG seems to be following Apple in that regard. From the iPhone 8 through the iPhone XS and the iPhone 11, Apple's gotten real warm. I mean, like every photo tries to be golden hour on the iPhone 11 Pro. LG hasn't gotten that bad, but they are trying to juice up their photography a bit. I'm not thrilled with that personally, but it makes sense considering the mainstream pivot for a V series phone. From Roth Sathi, B is pretty good. Aditya NL giving Matt Tyler the pat on the back. You know we love you. And hey Dave, it's most noticeable on the edges. I wish the V50 wasn't applying as much sharpening, but there is more information there. It is a crisper image. I just wish I could walk back some of that artificial contrasty structure that's being applied. From Noob Master, it looks like more megapixels and crop is the way to go. And Ross Sathi, we need to see how it performs in low light and night shots. I've got some comparisons for you. You know I'm going to be covering this. My V60 camera review is going to be real different from my previous camera reviews, but it's coming. It just takes a long time to shoot those things. Reviews are usually a best case scenario that don't account for compression murder that some image sharing sites do. Cough, cough, Instagram, cough, cough. So folks, I want to wrap this podcast up like we did last week. I know we've run stupid long. This is the longest podcast I've ever produced to this point, but some fun internet freebies. It was a fun thing to wrap up last week for. Check out the Epic Game Store. There are new games up on the Epic Game Store that you can grab for free. They refresh that list every week. But this was an interesting news article that popped up on Internet Archive. I was not aware that Internet Archive was doing this. The archive offers 1.4 million copyrighted books for free online. So the Internet Archive is an amazing resource. Everyone should be supporting the Internet Archive. But I did not know that they have a lending library. So they are time-coded PDF files, and I think they also deliver an EPUB, ebooks. This has been actually a fairly surprising legal sticky spot. The Internet Archive is not attached or recognized as a public institution or a community-funded library, a taxpayer-funded library. But they have been operating in some regions as a solution for communities that don't have access to a library, any digital or online services tied to their local library. So they've been collecting and digitizing copyrighted books. I mean, up until last year, like their categories, I don't believe they've uploaded anything for 2020, but you can go by year and they stop at 2019. So fairly recent and fairly new titles that are being digitized somehow and then are being stored and lent through the Internet Archive. They are opening up their restrictions during this situation, and you can go to Internet Archive, sign up, and borrow up to 10 ebooks for, I believe it's 2 weeks, 2 weeks per title, and read them just like any other library initiative. There has been some grumbling. I am pretty confident that this is not quite fully legally kosher in the exact way that libraries operate, because the Internet Archive is also going to be taking off the number of the number of books that can be lent at any given time. So the reason why I think Internet Archive was able to fly under the radar was because they would claim they've got 50 copies of this book, and then you would have to get in line if you wanted to borrow that book, and 50 other people currently had it out. We all rationally know that in a digital media environment that those restrictions on quantity don't really exist. So now it's only there's only a ticking clock on how long that file can remain active. There is not a quantity lock on how many copies of that book can be lent. I would assume that this will at some point be challenged legally, but until that point, here is a super huge online library. If you've been looking to pad out your ebook reading, your library book reading, go and check it out, because it's totally free, and you don't need to sign up with like your local library card or something like that. If you don't have a library card, go check out the Internet Archive and sign up, because right now it's accessible, it's free, and there are no lending limits, restrictions on the number of books that can be out at any given time. But this is also that second call. Support your local libraries. This is a really good time to have a library card, even for just the digital distribution and the ebooks and the videos and the music that you can stream. It's free. Your tax dollars go to support it, and you get way more benefit than the tiny bit of taxes you pay for it. From Aditya Anil, I really need an e-ink thingy. I'm not a huge fan of reading on color monitors. My wife's Kindle, I think, just died, and we're trying to figure that out. One other, just quick fun things to check out. It's not very long. It's 15 minutes. It's going to be barely a blip as a fun distraction, but we could all use some good news these days. So how about some good news from John Krasinski, which looks like it could be sort of a prototype for a future weekly show. I would watch a John Krasinski hosted show, and his first guest is Steve Carell. So to mark the 15th anniversary of The Office, Steve and John have a fun chat, and it's a cute little video. So just sharing that along with everybody, and that's going to wrap us up. Bit of freebies, some good content to share. Make sure those of you out there, your friends, your family, there's so much content, so much available. Money might be a little tight. As long as you can claw your way onto the internet, you can entertain yourselves on the cheap. So let's make sure those resources are getting out there. All right. That's going to do it. We got to wrap this up. I'm 40 minutes over. 40 minutes over my podcast. All right. Folks, I'm gonna pull the plug on this. Thank you so much for watching, for sharing, for being good tech neighbors. These conversations, these interactions, it really help replenish the weekly energy stores, getting me ready for the week. And I hope they're doing the same for you too. I hope these conversations are engaging. Not that we need distractions from the situation, but that we're able to focus on some things, still find other things entertaining, and that we can come together as these various communities. That's what still gives me a little hope for the future of humanity. So I hope that that's being conveyed, and I hope that you're all able to share on that too. Folks, I'm going to be back next week. Another probably long, rambling episode of the Monday Morning News Chat Show. I'm hoping to have another sit-down conversation with a buddy of mine, get back to a few more of the creator chat side podcasts on this podcast channel, so hopefully that'll be coming your way too. But I'll have more news. Everything that we've talked about today, all of the stuff that's coming to the various channels and networks and Patreon. Make sure you also check out what's happening at SomeGadgetGuy.com, because that's my one main hub of everything that we're all working on. Tie it all together, support the Reddit, support your favorite local content creators, those people who deserve and need more attention in this time. And just for you out there too, stay safe, keep your heads down, wash your hands, look out for each other. You know, this is the right time to step up and to be good neighbors, but also to be good tech citizens. And I have every confidence that the people watching this video are out there leading the way. Folks, I'll catch you back next week. You know where you can find me around the rest of social media at SomeGadgetGuy on all of the other platforms. And I'll catch you back here next week for another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show. I want you to do awesome with your technology. I want you to be awesome with your technology. And I'll see you back here next Monday morning. Take care. I love you all. I'll catch you back.